Hello and welcome back to Miss Dr. Kenya. I am excited today. Today we are going to spend some time catering to our young people who have graduated from high school and now transitioning to college. 2 episodes ago, I met with the youth council and I had an opportunity to talk to them about the lessons that they learned at the end of the school year. One of the members of the youth council, Ayema, has graduated from college. And while he was sharing, he acknowledged some very real fear as it relates to what's next for him and what's happening in his life. And it dawned on me that Ayema is likely not the only person with those questions, with those wonderings, who needs help. And so I reached out to someone that I know and respect. Again, I never invite anyone on this show that I do not know, that I do not believe has a high ethical and moral standard. And most importantly, a person who loves supporting children and youth. I need to know that your heart is in it. And this person's heart is definitely in it. Today, I am excited because I have invited author and coach Lawanna Wilson. Yay, everybody in the background clap. As a value development coach, and she's going to talk to you more about what that is. Lawanna is a creative and she is passionate about helping millennials and young adults of all ages know their value. She is passionate about them being empowered and their uniqueness, and she loves to facilitate the journey of discovery via her coaching program. And so Lawanna is going to get into that and talk to us more. So without further ado, radio personality, Miss Lawanna Wilson. Thank you, Lawanna.
Kenya, thank you for having me this afternoon. And I'm excited about our conversation and glad to be here.
Me too, me too. So, as you just heard me share, we have been working with young people, right? So Miss Dr. Kenya was founded originally to, and still is, I say originally, like there's been a change in the focus. There has not been.
Hmm.
But the purpose of Miss Dr. Kenya is to bring voice to the data that we read, right? Like we see all of the numbers and the statistics
Hmm.
and all of the things, but to me, they really have no value if we do not speak to the young people that these numbers represent. And so that's what the purpose of the Youth Council is to help us to understand the data from their point of view. And so when we are talking about the Youth Council, one of them, shared a very real sentiment in reference to, okay, I've graduated from high school, like now what? What do I
What do
do?
I do?
And I
Yeah,
felt like that was a legitimate question. And so
very real question.
I'm going to pivot to you. What is your
Yes.
advice in your role as a value development coach? What do they do?
Well, Dr. Kenya, just like you said, it's a very real question. I had an opportunity to actually poll some of our young people who are, heading to, whether they're heading to college or just straight from high school into the workplace. Either
Okay.
way, they're heading into the real world. And in that poll, they pretty much are all saying very similar things. What am I doing now? Like, how do I really function outside of the framework of my home, or my outside of the framework of my parent, who's pretty much been telling me what to do since I've been here, right?
Right.
And the concerns are things like, what do I do when I have to make financial decisions on my own? Uh, where is the money going to come from? A lot of children have, or young people have, very real concerns and fears about money and funding and cash flow.
Yeah.
Uh, and I guess that would have to do a lot to do with what their household was like or where they came from. They're asking things like, what do I, once this is all done, how do I transition into some normalcy of life? How do I even build that? Where do I even start? It's like I'm just starting from scratch, and I don't feel like I have even the tools to start building something that I can call my life or a life. And they find out really quickly, Dr. Kenya, that what they've been seeing on TV and maybe some of their favorite, celebrities or influencers,
Yeah,
it's not that easy. It's not as easy as it appears to be. And everybody doesn't just go viral overnight and things like that.
yes.
And that's what this generation is used to and accustomed to. And so that's kind of what they gravitate to. And then they realize that very well was probably not going to be my path. Really need to figure out some real steps to establishing myself and living out here on my own. And so, yes, very real fears, and very and they've been confirmed, those fears, from the mouths of our own young people, and they really want to know, who's going to help me do this? How do I do this?
You brought up a good point. I heard you say earlier that many of your students have referenced not necessarily knowing what to do because
Hmm.
their parents have pretty much so done everything for them up until the point that they have to transition to adulthood. And so they
Hmm.
find themselves not having any experience of their own to draw up on to make
Sure.
informed decisions for themselves. I can only imagine, and I assume, last month I did a feature on the idea of mastery. Like we talked about it all
Hmm.
social media, and then Miss Dr. Kenya was also dedicated to the topic of mastery. And one of the things that I shared in that podcast, and one of the things that I reiterated in my messages on social media, is that failing is a part of mastery,
Yes.
is a
Yes.
part of growing. Failing is a part of learning. But when everything has been done for you, literally
Hmm.
entire life, I can
Hmm.
imagine how scary failing is. Like failing is scary. It does not
It
feel
is.
right, even at the ripe old age of 40 plus. So I
Right.
can imagine at 18, like what it feels like to fail, especially when you have not been afforded the privilege. And yes, it is a privilege to
Yeah, it is.
and fail and start over. There's
Absolutely.
lots of lessons that are learned in that process.
Hmm.
But
Yes, Dr. King.
yeah, so I can only imagine that a significant portion of the work that you do has to
Hmm.
do with affirming children and youth, and
Hmm.
it's okay not to get it right the first time.
Hmm. Absolutely. What we do in my coaching program is exactly what you just said. You used the term mastery. I use the term strength based.
Ah,
And so what I try to do is help them identify what is it? What do I do well? What skills do I possess? Because we all have them, whether you've had an opportunity to really flex them and grow them and strengthen them, is neat is some have, some has it
right.
have it. However, I want to focus in on their their innate abilities, something that comes so natural for them that they are do well at, so that, to your point about failing, they can move from a space of security. And so when they do fail, it's not this devastating blow. As you said, failing is a part of life. It is uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to just take us out. And so when we give ourselves opportunity to, or give our young people opportunity to uh, function from a place of, well, I do this well, so if I make mistakes here in this space where I'm already comfortable, I know that's I'm only getting better.
Yes.
Sometimes they get thrown out into things that they are just, in this case, like this transition from home to real life, to the real world. They get thrown out into it, and they have nothing relative, Dr. Kenya, nothing to grab onto. And they don't know how to take what they do already know and work from there. So they're not just so, like, it's like being in the middle of an ocean, and not seeing land for miles around. You
Yeah.
just panic. And so, yes, we want to teach them from your space of mastery you have, and that you already have. This is not something you might have to discover it, and we walk them through discovering a lot of that, but it's there. Okay, it's there. And so, don't panic. We're going to identify that, and then we're going to show you how to operate from that space, so that you always have there's always this bit of comfort or confidence there. So when you're taking the next risk, you can go back to, but I'm good right here. So I can do this. I can step out, and even if I fail, it's just going to be learning versus it's over. And Dr. Kenya, let me throw this in a little side note. I think the big fear of failure for this generation is a result of social media. I won't blame it all on social media, but I'm going to say it does play a big part because when things happen in our lives now,
Yeah.
where do you find out about it? On social media. Your favorite people, your icons, your favorite, celebrities, all their business, including the negative, is on social media. It goes viral and everybody's laughing, everybody's commenting, everybody's talking about you. So can you imagine how that must feel to this generation when they pretty much grew up on social media? They don't want to ever be embarrassed. They don't ever want to fail. They don't ever want to make a mistake because of that. I think it's kind of an internal anxiety
Yeah.
that they could be outed or that their shortcoming or their failure could be put, for the world to see. And I think there's some anxiety there that is associated to how people on social media attack others when they are in spaces like that. And they just don't want to ever be in a space like that.
I completely agree. Like I
Yeah.
do understand that in today's world, cancel culture is real, right? Like if people,
Okay.
arrive at a decision about you or for whatever the reason,
Absolutely. Hmm.
whether it's true, whether it's valid or not, if there is this perception about you, then people are quick to come to draw a conclusion without having
Absolutely.
facts. That's very,
Hmm.
very real. That is why, like, I appreciate coaching programs like yours that really, really emphasize
Yes.
self-esteem, self-value, self-worth,
Hmm.
your innate abilities, because that is going to be what keeps you and sustains you at your core as you
Hmm.
navigate in today's society. I think that is very easy outside of the cancel culture. It's also very easy to compare yourself to what you see on.
Absolutely.
And we know in our rational mind, right, that most
Hmm.
of the things that we see are doctored, they're edited,
Hmm.
they're
Hmm.
they're not real. Yet and still, just by virtue of being people, we still find ourselves comparing ourselves to images and
Yeah.
concepts and ideas that we know
Hmm.
are not real, that they're feigned, that they're staged. Um, this is why, again, we have to come back to our children. We have to go back to our youth, and we have to help them to understand
Yeah.
and be firm and shored up in who they are. At the end of the
Yes.
day, they're going to have to be able to look in the mirror, good day, bad day, blah day, whatever's happening within
Yes, ma'am.
at their core, be accepting of themselves.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
when you decided to make self-esteem like one of the core pillars of your
I
program,
did.
is that what you were thinking, or what did you have in mind when you made self-esteem like a foundational principle?
Well, as a value development coach, and this came out of a result of writing my first book. And in that book, I really was wanting to give young people kind of an inside look on where this is all going for you. Not that it's going to be exactly like my life, but just give you some insight on some of the pitfalls, some of the ups and downs, and just like an open letter. That's really was. It was really like an open letter to the millennials, to Gen Z, to give them somewhere to refer back to when they were having days like that. And out of that, discussion began with young people, and they began to ask questions like, or show me that they were unsure with their questions. They were showing me they were unsure about their worth, their personal worth. Like no one had ever really just affirmed them in that way, and I found that interesting because I felt like, well, nobody's ever told you good job or hey, you do that really well, stick with that. A lot hadn't, unless they had been in like a sport where you're in a team setting and you have an actual coach who's helping you improve on those skills. There are a lot of young people who had never had a conversation with anybody about what was good about them, what was worthy about them. And that really hit me, Dr. Kenya. I was like, well, that's huge. So yes, as a result of that, I began to hone in on that self-esteem, self-worth part of it because I started to notice as I tracked it in several individuals, that this was affecting their whole outlook on life. And we got into that whole thing several years ago about high value man, high value woman. And this gets over into my single space. I also talk to singles quite often. And I really was like, what is it about this that everybody is so like, why is this drawing everybody in? This is horrible.
Right.
Dare you try to uh, place on me value based on these shallow things and tell me if I'm high value or low value.
Right.
Every human that comes in this earth has value, period. Not high, not low, they have value. And I saw these young people struggling to find, uh, to grasp and find their place in that space of, I am valuable, I love me, I'm great, I have something to offer. They literally had not ever even kind of thought along those lines. I even went as far as this, Dr. Kenya. I did a podcast episode where I asked the men, specifically young men. Well, I think it was men of all ages, actually, not just young men. When did they have a conversation about their value and worth? Like
Mm.
when in life? You know, they could, none of them could tell me, could not say specifically that they ever had a conversation with an older man or anybody, their mom, somebody about their personal value. Now, my girls are a little different. Young ladies a little different because we get certain talks, and even if it doesn't necessarily focus on like you know worth, there in some ways it's saying, um, "Hey, don't let a man do this. Hey, don't let somebody treat you this way or that way." We get those talks.
Right.
Young men, not so much, and so it's even more of an issue with the men that I found than with the ladies. But everybody needs to have a conversation about what it is about me that makes me important and necessary on this planet. And when you have never had that conversation, your approach to life tends to be very desperate,
Mm.
very insecure, full of a lot of anxiety. That's
Yeah.
what I found in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's so interesting that you say that because in my conversations with young people, and I am intentional about having conversations
Mhm.
with
Yes.
students around the nation, and
Mhm.
all of them share regularly and consistently that they do not
Mhm.
seen or heard. So
Nope.
anytime I am in
Yeah.
an audience with adults, I am very clear to say our young people do not feel seen, they do not feel heard. We need
Mhm.
to go out of our way to validate them. And it does not have to be a big exercise. It can simply be a stop and a pause and an acknowledgement
Yes.
of their perseverance,
Yes.
of their try, right? So we don't have to wait till the year-end recital to acknowledge our young people. We can acknowledge that they got up on a day-to-day basis, that even
Okay.
when their motivation was gone, that they got up and went anyway, that they stuck to
Mhm.
they persevered. We can acknowledge that they have a desire to even want to learn
Yes.
how to play an instrument, but we need to be intentional about stopping and pausing and seeing our children, listening to their heart, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So even when you listen to their heart, you may disagree, but you can still validate them and
Mhm.
right. So I think that a lot of
Exactly.
um confuse validation with agreement. I can
Mhm.
disagree with a particular behavior, but I can
Mhm.
where that behavior came from. So for
Mhm.
example, if I have, I'm gonna pick on my nephews. I have a set of
Okay.
twins, right? Who
Yes.
literally just turned 8 this month in August. And so I can validate that one of the twins is angry, right? Because he felt like his brother took a toy from him unjustly, just
Mhm.
up. And still hold firm to the fact that that anger does not give you the right to hit your brother, right?
Right.
I can
Right.
acknowledge the feeling. Like I can see that that's very frustrating for you. I can understand that you're angry, but when you get angry, this is how you demonstrate your anger, right?
Mhm.
It's not
Mhm.
okay. So in the very same way, validation does not mean agreement, but it does
Right.
mean understand where you're coming from as
Mhm.
best as I can, that I put myself in your shoes,
Yes.
try to see it from your lens, and I see you. I
Mhm.
That sounds so simple to me. Again, but I'm a psychotherapist, right? So I am definitely very biased, but I
Mhm.
from too many young people that they don't feel seen or heard
Mhm.
to ignore it. So I
Yeah.
know that it's not a runoff, for lack of better words, because I'm not hearing it from one child or another. I'm hearing it
Right.
from children in middle,
Um,
high school,
mhm.
elementary school. I did an event last Saturday, and I met with a kindergartner and a second grader, and they
Mhm.
verbalized something similar. So
Wow.
pattern,
That
um,
early.
yeah, and it starts early.
Mhm.
We really need to stop and validate our children, whatever that looks like for you, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But it's interesting that your data, even with young adults, that
Yeah.
they're coming back and they're saying the same thing. Uh,
Yeah.
what, why do you think that it's so hard for adults to find the words to say, I'm proud of you? Like it really
Mhm.
just comes down to that. I'm proud of you, not because of your performance. I'm proud of you simply for who you are as a person
Mhm.
innately. Why do you think that's so hard for us?
Dr. Kenya, this has a lot of different angles you can go, asking why parents don't do that as easily as it seems like it should be. The first one that is probably the most evident is that they didn't get the same. They didn't get that.
Yeah.
Nobody ever said that to them. Nobody ever asked them what they felt like. I know my generation growing up, it wasn't about what you were feeling. It was about what I told you to do. And it was, and it was about I'm your mother or I'm your father, and I said, and so you follow through. And it was about you respect your elders, things of that nature. And so, as a child, although I would say my parents listened to me more than maybe their generation, my parents' generation, because in their generation it was you are seen, not heard. In my generation, with my parents, I won't say that they did not listen to me, but their word trumped mine
Mhm.
on most occasions. Not all. There were times where they actually were like, I need to understand what's going on with you, and they listened. But for the majority of the time, to your point about being told everything, here's a script, you follow the script, you do what I'm telling you to do. That was life. And so there weren't these check-ins that said, what's happening with you? How's school? Are you, how do you feel about how do you feel about being there? Are you making friends? Do you like your friends? What kind of things do you all, there was not that kind of check-in. And so because there wasn't, we went on with our life with that model. That's the framework we had. And so that's the framework we worked from when we brought children into the world. And so
Yeah.
I really think a lot of it is just we didn't get it. We don't know how to do that. I'll give you a good example. Here's my dad several years ago, one of my male cousins, really going through a rough time. He was a young man at that point, a dad at that point, and had just lost his dad and just really struggling. And so I went to my dad, and I said, Daddy, can you give him a call and just kind of, you know, we were on the phone the other night, and he's really going through it. I think it'd be helpful if he heard from one of his uncles.
Mm.
Um, Bless my dad's heart. He was like, well, what do you want me to tell him? And I was kind of like, men things, whatever men say to men, whatever an older man would say to a younger man in his situation, his predicament. And my dad was just like, I really don't know where to even start.
Yeah.
And so, not a negative against him. He just never had that. So it was like foreign to him to call up his nephew and be like, "Hey, son, what you going through?" Whatever. He just did not know how to do it.
Right.
And so I think a lot of it is just never having that framework. We were never treated that way. And so we just go on into life with our set of kids and come from where we were and what we know. I think that's a part of it. I think that's a big part of it. I think the second major part of it too is how we feel about ourselves. A lot of parents are parenting out of a space of I didn't get, so I'm trying to do all these things for mine so that they never feel like I felt. And your child, although they came from you, are a totally different person. And you can't assume that they're feeling the way you felt as a child.
Yeah.
And so you assume that what you didn't get or some of the things that your parents didn't do for you um, are gonna have the big effect they had on you, like they on your own child. Your child is a whole other person. And so with that, we tend to come as parents, we tend to come from a space of we're afraid. We don't want our children, like you said, to suffer, to feel any anguish, to feel any insecurity. So what do we do, Dr. Kenya? We just make sure they have stuff. And that's actually us trying to do what you said, trying to affirm, trying to let them know we care, we see you. But man, I tell you what, those words are way more powerful than any gift, any item off their wish list. They
Yes.
want their time and they need to hear your words. And those are just the more powerful things. You can give them everything in the world and
Right.
they'll still grow up and say, I didn't feel seen. I didn't feel heard because they need to hear it from your mouth. They need to hear it. So those are the two main things that I run into that I think are big factors in that.
And I want to add a third thing to that because I
Mhm.
really feel like the crisis is universal.
It
Um,
is.
and it's wrapped up into this one question. What do you want to be when you grow up? That
Wow.
question
That
um,
question.
implies that your worth is tied into your ability to produce, that
Mhm.
your worth and your value is tied into your profession.
That's
And so
it.
we grow up, right? Myself included, we find
That's
pursuing a profession not something that we enjoy, but we're pursuing a profession really because we are seeking status, we are seeking validation. And when
yeah.
we do not achieve that thing that we want to be, we feel
Mhm.
like we as a person,
Yeah.
right, don't have value.
Don't
Well,
have
no,
any value.
that's absolutely ridiculous. Who you
Mhm.
are as a person, your value as a person has absolutely nothing to do with what you do for a living.
It
Yes,
does not.
appreciate people who are in the helping profession and
Mhm.
we appreciate the help that they provide. But being a doctor does not give you any more value than a bus driver, right?
Absolutely.
You both have value. Um,
Mhm.
a doctor does not give you more value than a janitor, right? And
Right.
if
Right.
you walk into a building that's nasty, you don't want to,
Mhm.
right? If you walk into a
Right.
hospital sanitary, you don't want to go
You
there.
don't want to be there. Mhm.
Operate on you because the hospital is unsanitary. So everybody
Mhm.
building, everybody in the place has value, but because
Yes.
from a young age we are asked, "What do you want to be
Mhm.
when you grow up?"
Mhm.
It implies that I'm not good enough right here, right now, just as I am. That I have
Mhm.
something, I have to gain some type of certificate, credential, experience,
Mhm. Mhm.
something outside of myself to have
Mhm.
value. And I wish that we could do some reframing in our
I
conversation
do. Mhm.
with our children, even with ourselves, Lawanna, too.
Mhm.
Like we are raising our children based upon the model that was provided for us. So we're doing just what we know to do. So if we
Absolutely.
some of our internal dialogue, it would also
Mhm.
change how we talk to our children. But
Oh
I
yes.
like we should start with what do you enjoy? Right? What brings you peace? What brings you happiness? And
Yes.
once we find that thing out, then what are some professions that are consistent with that? Try them
Mhm.
out. See if you like it. Do some internships, volunteer,
Yes.
fellowships, right? But we
Mhm.
start off with, what do you want to be? And everybody wants to be a doctor or a lawyer, a,
Lawyer,
right?
engineer. Yeah. Mhm. Those
Right.
things.
You don't even know if you have the capacity to do that. You don't know if you have the
Exactly, Dr. Gates.
right, but you know that it pays well and that it's respected, and that's what you want.
Mhm.
I really think that we should reframe and ask, what do you enjoy? What brings you
Yes. Yes.
peace?
I agree.
What, to your point earlier, what skills and gifts and abilities do you?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think that if we reframed that one question, that it will have a tremendous impact on how we see ourselves, our self-esteem, our self-worth,
Yes,
value, all the things. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. I've always found that to be a very dangerous
Yeah,
question.
it is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. So we've talked about what the problem is, right? And I
Mhm,
want to
mhm.
talk about the solution that you've crafted.
Yes,
Um,
ma'am.
you mentioned your book earlier and talked about
Mhm.
how, in response to that book, young people started to come to you and have these conversations with you. And I'm assuming that the coaching program was birthed out of those conversations. So if you could
It
just
sure was.
audience to both your book and talk about the coaching program that came out of that.
Yes. So the book, as I mentioned earlier, really was an open letter to millennials and Gen Z. And I really wanted to walk them through a portion of my life and what the transition was like for me when I left home and went to college and all the things that I discovered. Some things I learned were kind of universal. Everybody went through it. Everybody kind of had a similar situation. And I wanted to really talk through some of the pitfalls, some of the things that we encounter and we aren't sure how to get out of, how to work our way through it. And in the time of writing the book and then releasing the book, a lot of these conversations started with young people. And I began mentoring. I had been mentoring for some years prior to even the book coming out in 2017. And a lot of these conversations were starting where they were asking some really great questions, Dr. Kenya. How do I know I'm in love? How do I know if this is the right job for me? Or what if I don't want to go to college? What everybody talks about college. What do I do? So a lot of really good questions. How do I get out of this situation? Things of that nature. And so those conversations started. The book came out, and those conversations increased. And I finally realized, Lawanna, this is more than just mentoring for you. This is something that you really need to put some framework to and put some real intentionality into it and build out something that can be longevous and continue to help students, for however long, it goes. And so out of that, so the book is called Virgin. Let me make sure I mention that. Title of the book is called Virgin. And it's not about what you think. But it's very good. Go ahead. Say again.
Because Virgin is an acronym.
It is. That's what I was going to say. Virgin is an acronym, and it stands for Valuable Individual Requiring God's Influence Now. And so, very long title, couldn't have been on the book, so we make it an acronym. And in that book, literally, as you see in the first letter, valuable, that's what we're talking about. We're coming from an angle of your value and how that really shapes the direction that you're going to go in life. If you can just secure that understanding that you are valuable, period, no ifs, no ands, okay? And so from that book, we moved into this is more than just a book. This is more than a few conversations and some mentoring here and there. This is actually something that's needed. And begin to really play with the idea of what would a program look like? How would I want to build this out? Initially, we were doing what I was calling Value You, and it was like a 30-day, 28-day, 30-day program where you went through some of the aspects that we've mentioned already: decision making, relationship building, self self worth, and self care. And we talked about those four things. However, at the end of those days, people were like, I need more. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough time. They needed to dig. They were like, these are concepts that I never really even thought through. So I need more time. So that's when I started looking at something longer. And now we're rebranding all together, and it's called Life Launch Coaching, Student Coaching. And it really is reflective of what it all encompasses. It's really talking about launching your young person into their life, literally. And so where academic prep and coaching ends, that's where my program begins with just the transitional coaching and still in those four aspects. And we have taken the approach of really framing this in a way that young people can grasp it, and it really gets their wheels turning, Dr. Kenya. It really gets them thinking about things that they're like, wow, nobody ever asked me this. I didn't know that I should be considering this. And so we have a four-step system called the dress code. And it's basically those four components that I mentioned. The D in dress code is for decision making. The R is for relationship building. The S is for self worth, and the other S is for self care. And so we approach it from that angle, and we are really trying to set our young people up to be able to be what I call real world ready and approach life from not this deficit mindset, not this fear based or anxiety mindset of I don't know what to do, where do I go, how do I do this, but from a strength based approach where they feel confident enough to begin a life for themselves and begin building that life for themselves. I'm not sure if I answered all of your questions. Let me know if I did.
You did, you did.
Okay.
But my follow-up to that is help me to understand where the blueprint comes in, because I kind of
Okay.
stopped you
Yes.
on the internet, right?
Yes.
And I was really intrigued by the whole blueprint that you
Yes.
create, kind of like as a guide
Hmm.
to help them, like with that decision making and
Yeah.
all things. So tell me in everything that you said, can you
Sure.
more on how the blueprint ties into that?
Okay, the blueprint is the concept not original to me, actually from a speech Dr. Martin Luther King did with, I believe it was high schoolers, might have been middle schoolers or high schoolers. However, he made an appearance and he was sharing with them some points about what life was about to be about once they stepped out into the real world. And that is his term, the blueprint. And
Wow.
so I adapted that and just kind of engrafted into. I was like, well, what would that look like in my program? Because I really want them to walk away with something tangible, not just some good conversations and some good thought provoking things like that, but really something that can grow with them. So the
Yeah.
blueprint is kind of like I'll say like your final paper. Like when you're in class and you have that final paper that you have to write,
Yeah.
your blueprint is going to be like that. And throughout the entire 90-day program, you have a document that you are going to be adding things to as we go that you are discovering about yourself that you're going to be able to look back, you're going to be able to refer to this, back to this throughout your life as your life evolves and change. You're going to start with these are the things right now that I'm interested in. These are the things that I feel like I need the most help or coaching or assistance in, and these are my future goals. And as you go through life, some of these things are going to change. Some of these things you're going to remove from that blueprint and replace with other things. But there are going to be several things that are just going to be like rock solid. This is me, and it's not going anywhere. And those are the areas that you're going to build your blueprint of your life on. And so it's going to actually give you something that you can say, oh, yeah, that's right. I said I was going to write a book, and here I am 10 years later, 5 years later, writing this book. That's because I was able to put this down on something recorded and have it with me to remind myself of the goal, remind myself of what it is that I'm strong at, what it is that I master, and remind myself of where I'm headed. And so that's what I was going for the blueprint. I'm really excited about rolling that out in the program. I think it's going to really be helpful to a lot of students to have something physical that they can refer back to. See, I'm a journaler, Dr. Kenya, so I have journals from third grade, literally and I can refer back to those. But not everybody's a journaler. People don't like to sit down and write, and that sort of thing. So I felt like this would be a good way to log and to follow your journey and have something to refer back to that you can build from. So that's where the blueprint comes from.
I think it's an amazing idea. I definitely believe in the power of journaling. I journal, but
Hmm.
because I grew up in a time frame where everybody had diaries, so transition
Yes.
was just natural to me, and I still journal to
Hmm.
this day
I
myself
sure do. Yeah.
and look back on what I said, back then, and
Hmm.
have a record of my growth, right? So it's like,
Yes. Yes.
and it, going back to the whole, self-esteem, self-worth, and all of
Hmm.
that, it really does help when you are able to go back and see, okay, I have grown, I have matured, I have
Hmm.
my goals, because just
Yes.
ago, 4 years ago, 6 years ago, this is where I was. And now,
Hmm.
like, I actually am living in a goal. I
Yep.
am actually living.
Actually living it.
So I think the journals can be powerful. Again, I'm very biased because I've had a diary.
Right.
Now I just journals, which I feel like are just
Mhm.
a version of diaries, to be truthful.
Yes.
Um, I think the whole idea of the blueprint is really, really great. I'm grateful that you are doing that with our young
Yes,
people,
thank you.
because they definitely need it.
Amen. Yeah.
But now, though we gave parents and adults a bad rap, I want to
Mhm.
circle back to them because
Yes,
um, parents and educators, I feel like they are very pivotal in this process for our young.
extremely. Hmm.
From your perspective, we can answer the question in two parts. The first question is, how can parents partner with you, with me, with other helping professionals who are working with their young people who have a little bit more of their trust, right?
Yes, yes.
In helping them to successfully go from high school to life, whatever that looks like. It can be college or career.
Hmm.
And then what's the role of schools and educators in that? But I
Yes,
really feel like those are two really
yes.
good questions. And so let's start from the perspective of the parents. How can parents partner
Okay.
in this process?
Great, great question. And like you said, we don't want to give the parents a bad rap because when I tell you parents work hard, my gosh, it is just speechless all that they do and go through for their children. And I want to say to the parents, your young person is, as you already know, is amazing. They are intelligent. They very often they wow you, but you don't say it because you don't want them to get that big head. Well, I'm gonna give you permission, parents, to go ahead and say it.
Yeah.
You know your child well enough to know how to keep them humble, okay? And I'm going to say, go ahead and let them know when they have just really impressed you, or when you want them to know, you know, hey, I see you trying. And these are the things that, as we said earlier, that they need to hear more than the stuff that you can give them. Go ahead, just randomly, randomly. It doesn't have to be a big occasion. Let them know that is great. You got that D. I saw it was a B. Hey, you working hard. I see it. Okay, let them know that. What I'm noticing now, Dr. Kenya, with my parents is that I had been focusing on the young people so much until, quite honestly, I had forgot about my parents. And when the program, I did a beta group last summer just to kind of see what a run through would be like. The parents were the relief on their faces. They were just like, where have you been? I had done and said everything I knew to say and do, and I'm getting ready to ship them off to wherever. And, and I just knew in my heart, because I know my child, they were not altogether ready for the real world. And I just didn't know what else to do. I felt like I had done all I could. And that's where we get that African proverb I really fits in, is that it takes a village
Yeah.
to raise a child. And so in that respect, I was able to come alongside a parent and say, you know what? It's okay. We have something set up for that part to supplement all that you've already done, all of your sacrifice, all of the things that you have put into this child and poured into this child. And they get to that stage, Dr. Kenyon, where they're like, I don't even want to hear anything else that mom and dad have to say. They feel like they've heard enough. And so now it's time to put them in the hands of someone that they're listened to.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that ends up being me and people like me, coaches like me. And so that would be my encouragement to my parents right now. There are people who will absolutely come alongside of you and your young person in this transition and help them get through it successfully. And don't feel like you are lacking or you didn't do, don't get down on yourself as a parent, feeling like there were things that you didn't do. Trust me, you did everything you could in your power, and some things that weren't in your power, you figured out. Okay, and now it's okay to say my child needs some extra things that I wasn't able to really instill there, and you've got some reputable people that you can say, hey, can you step in and help? And it's okay to ask for that kind of help, parent. It's okay. So that's what I would say to the parents.
You know what, Lawanna, you bring up a good point because I just had a session not too long ago. Um, where we were talking about this whole thing about being seen,
Hmm.
heard. And, I kind of reframed, what the other person in therapy said. And I asked the other person, like, can you acknowledge where they're coming
Yeah.
from feelings level, right? Not about
Hmm. Hmm. Right.
feelings level, because that's what
Hmm.
the person is asking you for. And I loved the moment when they said, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to do.
Yeah. Yeah, Dr. Kenya.
Yeah, and it was a
Mhm.
beautiful moment to me for them
Yeah.
to stop and acknowledge, like, I don't know what that is. I don't know how to tap into
Mhm.
my, my feelings space. I know how to identify behavior and tell you what I don't like about a behavior and what I do appreciate about a behavior, but to
Mhm.
take the feelings part of it, that part of myself is cut off. And so
Mm.
that
Wow.
in some of your conversations with your parents, they are saying,
Hmm.
I've done all that I know how to do, but I can tell that my student needs more. I think that is absolutely beautiful for parents literally
Hmm.
to say that.
I get that. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know what to do. But I want to show up for you. Show me.
Hmm.
If you can just say that, even if you can't
Hmm.
tap your feeling space, even if you don't know how to be vulnerable, if you have cut off yourself from your feelings to survive in a very mean world,
Hmm. Hmm.
acknowledge that and say, I don't know. I
Yeah.
tell that you need my help with something. What is it? How do you need me to show up for you? And then
Mhm.
to pivot, if you don't have those words in that space to show up for them like they are asking, to them
Mhm.
allow them to work with someone like
Yeah.
Coach Lawanna. Um,
Yes.
so I think that is very real. Like sometimes we do
Mhm.
have expectations of parents that are unfair.
Not
It's
fair. Absolutely.
not that they're
Hmm.
holding back. They literally
Hmm.
don't know.
Yeah.
They don't have the
Yeah.
word.
Hmm.
Don't have the.
Hmm.
So yeah.
To your second question, or second part of that question, for the educators and those people in those roles, um, this is something. This is interesting because I am right now. I'm working with the public school system here in Nashville, and I'm getting a real bird's eye view of what they go through as well. And then you're in a class of 20, maybe sometimes 20 plus students, having to give everybody the individualized attention that they need to make sure they succeed. And for my educators, I am going to say a couple of things as far as how can they partner or how can they come alongside of their student, because they have such a big task, and the way the possibility of focusing in on each student the way they really need to or could is slim, Dr. Kenya. It's a lot going on, a lot of things moving, and you just you're just trying to get through the day. You're just trying to get through the day. And I would say that those times of parent teacher uh, interaction, those times of where you're testing your students to see where they are in their proficiency and things, make maximize on that. Make that some time where you have that student's results in front of you, and so as a teacher, you have pretty much assessed your class. You know who's the overachiever. You know who's the one that's a little gifted. This is not really challenging them enough. They may need a little extra. You know the ones that are struggling with focusing and they just for whatever reason can't get the work done, and on and on. You've pretty much assessed that. So use these times of parent teacher conferences, anytime you can interact with a parent, and times when you have individual one-on-one with the child. I know when I was subbing a lot, I would go around to each child during the course of whatever classwork we were working on. And I would stop by each desk and just look and see what they're doing. And some would be doodling, some would be actually doing the work. Some would be, you had a variety. And I would take it might have been 30 seconds, Dr. Kenya, but I would, okay, now what do you do? Okay, now why are you doodling instead of, what's going on over here? Feel all right? Everything okay? You know? And throughout the day, I would just look at my class and be like, we good? Everybody good? Yeah, no? Okay, what's going on, Kevin? Okay, and so you have to do a check and see where are we? What's going on here? And so I would just say maximize on that. When you have to talk to a parent about a student who's not doing so great, take it as an opportunity to, share with them some insight that they may not have versus just going down the list of they don't talk, they don't listen. They're always talking, let's go the route of we can always reframe in a positive way, Dr. Kenya, so that information is getting across to a parent in a way that they don't walk away going like, oh gosh, my child is, feeling so down about it. Let's rephrase it. Okay, so he's talkative. However, one day that talkativeness may be his golden ticket. That might be the thing. So as a teacher, I'm telling my parent he's talkative. Kind of talk to him a little bit about when that's good and when that's not good, because there's actually some good things about his talkativeness, his expressiveness. That's not a bad thing. So let's not frame it that way. It's just distracting when it comes at the wrong time. So I think we have, as educators, have to do a little reframing, and to our best ability, wherever we can spend some little personal time with each student, do that, maximize on it the best way you can, and maximize those times with the parent when you all are having conversation about the student, and make sure you're offering the information, whether it's negative or not, in a way that a parent can walk away saying, okay, so my child is talkative, but that's not something I'm about to go home and take everything away from him. And now it's like you better stop all that talking. Dr. Kenya, he probably can't stop all that talking. Literally, it literally is probably a gift. There's something else going on there other than you're talking too much and just being bad at class. But we got to take the time to spend to find out what that is.
Yeah.
Why do you need to talk? And find out versus frame it as bad behavior. And now we're in this fight to get him to reverse and correct said bad behavior. So those are some reframing things that I would just suggest for teachers. It's a hard job that they have, and I commend them at what they do.
Yeah. So, Lawanna, as you know, like I spent the past 20 years working with students and families in schools.
Yes.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
I was a, school social worker, then a program manager, then senior director. And so school has been my setting for
Mm-hmm.
my entire career.
Mm-hmm.
And that is specifically why Kaleidoscope exists today. It is to be a bridge between home and school, because we need each other. We
We
need
do.
homes, need schools, and schools need homes in order
Mm-hmm.
for our students to be holistically well. And
Yeah.
so the answer, right, is definitely to partner with schools. And another
Yes.
way to look at this is that our young people show up differently in the school environment than they do in the
They
home
sure do.
environment. They do when
Mm-hmm.
they are, with their basketball team, right?
Mm-hmm. They sure do.
They are responding to the environment. And so we
Mm-hmm.
all know little bits and pieces about this particular
Very true. Very
young.
true.
And when we come together and have conversations about our children and youth, then we start to develop a whole picture of who they are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I feel like the conversations between home and school are necessary so that
Mm-hmm.
each location, right, can
Yes.
full understanding of who this young person
Who
is
they are.
and how they show up and
Mm-hmm.
what they respond to, what they don't respond to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel like the conversations are necessary so that we can
So,
get a picture of our students. I also feel like we need to be having those communications when they are thriving and when they
mm-hmm.
are
Yes.
no one person is always good or always bad, if we're going to.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
So we need to be engaged in ongoing conversation in reference to what's going on with our students, really so that we can get a whole picture and so that we do not rush to judgment.
Absolutely, Dr. Kenya. I love that you made that point that it does need to be that partnership between the school and the parent, and that your child is showing up differently in this setting than he or she is at home. And I think as parents, they feel like I know my child. You can't tell me anything about my child. There are parents that are like that, and so that's such a key component realizing that there's a good chance there's a sides of your child that you've never witnessed
Right.
because in a group setting, they do and act in a different way. And that is just so, I think, eye-opening and can be so eye-opening to a parent in their kind of creating that bond and creating that relationship and developing that relationship between our child. Is knowing that there's a good chance they're showing up as somebody totally different, maybe not totally different, but there's some sides that you really have not seen. And not always is it the teacher just trying to maybe label your child or put them in a negative light or whatever. There may be some truth to it, and it may be something you need to explore. But keeping that in mind is just crucial. That yeah, you're experiencing one side, and this teacher is experiencing possibly a whole other side.
That's correct.
I love
It's
that.
social
Hmm.
psychology one. Like
Yeah.
you are definitely impacted by our
Hmm.
environment, period.
Yeah.
Um,
Very.
so yeah, definitely where our setting makes a difference in
Hmm.
how
It
we show.
does. Hmm.
So Luana, I have enjoyed my conversation with you. Is there anything
I
that
have.
you wanted to share with the people that you haven't had an opportunity to share yet?
Just that I want to reiterate that we're getting ready to do a whole rebrand. I started out with my coaching as Value You program, and we were really focusing just on the aspect of the self value and self worth. But now with a lot of work, and that Dr. Kenya and I are a part of a cohort that we've just been doing a lot of work in here lately. I've been able to really flesh that program out, really revamp it to, I think, the fullness of what it needs to be. And so I'm excited about that. Please give me a follow on all social media platforms, Lawanna R. Wilson, and you'll get to be a part of that rollout of life launch student coaching, and we're going to get in there and partner with these parents and students and get our children on the right path to the real world. It's a lot out there, a lot of influences, a lot of things that capture their attention. We just want to make sure that they have the tools to navigate all of that and turn their lives into something that they're proud of, and that they are succeeding in. So just keep your eyes open for that. And Dr. Kenya, this has been a great conversation talking about something that is so near and dear to my heart. And I'm excited about what all is happening with you as well in Kaleidoscope, and looking forward to all that's coming from there.
All right. I mean, we're doing the work together. You're getting it
Yes,
from one angle, I'm getting it from another.
yes,
They need us both.
yes. Need us both. They do.
Thank you for the work that you do with our young people. They definitely are afraid. I mean,
Yeah,
that's what they're
very
telling,
much.
what we're seeing. And I
Mhm.
appreciate me being able to hand off a Yema to you theoretically, and to know that he
Mhm.
has good hands and that he will have a blueprint that he can,
Yes.
as he navigates and moves forward in adulthood. So thank you for the work that you do. Is very valuable work, and I appreciate you.
Thank you, Dr. Kenny. I appreciate that, and I very much appreciate all that you do as well. And I'm just excited. I'm excited about what we're doing. I'm excited about how our children are going to really be just so much more prepared now with
Yeah,
what we're doing. So, yeah.
we got him. All right, y'all. Thank you for joining me for this month's episode of Miss Dr. Kenya, and I look forward to seeing you next month. Bye.